Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to my overview of Black Myth Wukong. So for those that are across it on this channel, I do overview videos. I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game because that's the Steam refund window. Steam reckons you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or not in that time, and I would broadly agree and say that generally 20 hours in, you're not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, keep it around 10 minutes and give you the broad strokes info, and then you can make up your mind on your own. I've actually played more than two. I played around about 5 or 6 hours. I was contemplating reviewing, not to channel business front load, but I flip-flop on the format. The truth is, I understand what this game is enough already. And my videos are less about ego and work product and more about going, hey, fellow dickhead cavemen gamers, here's a game I recommend or don't recommend, and that's all that really matters. So on that, worth your time, worth your money? Yeah, I think so. This is actually a really solid, fun game. There's a lot of aspects to like meta reception, I suppose you could say. There's a bit of a political battleground being fought on it. Is it overhyped? Well, I don't know. When something's a spearhead of a movement, is it overhyped or is it appropriate whiplash and backlash? You know, there's a few things to talk about, but at its core, as a game, it's really fun. It's really engaging. There's a lot of spectacle. There's a lot of challenge, but it's not overwhelming. Dare I say, it's a cool entry and potentially a look at what AAA might turn into and pivot now that the wider scene is opening up to more countries abroad, namely in this case, China. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you've got the splash around money because it's not cheap, it's AAA price, but I would say it's AAA standard in many ways. In fact, this might be one of the prettiest games I've played in recent times. Now look, I know you're not allowed to say good things about Ubisoft, it's a boogeyman, really bad, but seriously, to this day, one of the most beautiful, gorgeous games I've ever played in my life is Avatar, Frontiers of whatever the bloody hell, Pandora or something like that. Now, it doesn't hurt that they're doing a lot of similar jungle scapes, at least in the early going of this. Well, I'm up to a desert biome and I did fight in the clouds, but regardless, the environments are absolutely pristine. They are beautiful. I think they've done what, AAA honestly is failing to realize, and you see more and more in that AA space where environmental fidelity, environmental storytelling, not so much here, but making your environments beautiful is a much more graspable and effective strategy as opposed to trying to do high fidelity faces. In fact, you could probably argue there are human characters in here and they're nothing particularly special, but the whole going for anthropomorphic animals, I guess it's all part of the mythology of Sun Wukong, but they all look really cool and inventive and original. And it is, refreshing seeing a new culture enter the arena. A lot of, what comes across my desk is Western and plagued with all the issues there, but you also have Japanese and they have their own insanity and quirks there. But it's cool, these guys sit out the corrupted paradigm of bloody anthropomorphic animals having to be furries and sexualized and fetishized, and you can see it, they call it coding these days. You can see it in a lot of games these days. That's why I hate furries and anything with some sort of animal character. But in this, it's played straight and they kind of look badass. I was having a conversation with a horsehead fucking dude and he's ripped Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles, and it's all played very straight. And I like it. Tragically refreshing. At first blush, you might think that this is a Souls-like game. It's not. I suppose you could argue it's got some layers to it in that you push through areas and you essentially hit a checkpoint, which is an all-in-one mini shop crafting space similar to a bonfire. But there's no souls per se. Not in the, if I die, I drop them and have to pick them up again. You can just grind dudes, you can reset them, grind that area. So the whole idea of bonfire grinding, if maybe you're outplayed or under-leveled, is there, but this leans much closer to the sort of action-adventure type games of yesteryear. In some ways, I get OG God of War type vibes. And while the game is tough as a default, it's not brutal, pull your fingernails out hard or anything like that. It's very dodge heavy. So if you're someone that does play Souls-like type games and you prefer dodging and iframes over shields, you're gonna love this. I'm kind of thriving because that's sort of my bread and butter. But as far as like being over leveled or anything like that, yes, there's a difficulty challenge, but you essentially get a lot of points quite generously that you can put into different trees. There's a lot of stuff, arguably, and I wonder how balanced it would be in the longer run, because there's so many different things that you can specialize into, which is cool. Like, for instance, I'm pretty much a glass cannon, all out light and stamina attacks sort of thing. So I just flurry like crazy with my little bloody stick, and I dodge like a madman, but I can only really take 1 or 2 hits, which, you know, arguably I'm making the bosses artificially difficult for me, but I'm not putting my points into dump stats for increased health, etc. And my moveset, especially for light attacks, is pretty robust. However, the game clearly wants me to really engage with the heavy attacks. There's entire huge trees and different stances around how you engage with that and generate heavy attack points. But there's also like magic systems, there's a mobilize spell. I've got a whole bunch of spells like a ghost walk stealth spell. There's a transforming into other creatures, like you can beat certain bosses and they'll give you a transform, and you can put all your points into that tree if you want. Then there's other things, you can get certain souls and you can slot that as a sort of, I don't know, almost EX bar spell that stands separate apart. There's a twirling blade move, which is more for deflecting arrows, but there's an entire tree dedicated to turning that into something with higher utility. So there's a lot of diverse ways to skin the cat. And if you did find this too difficult, you know, if you're a game journalist or something like that, you could probably forego specializing in these areas and just dump heavy into health and healing and just sort of grind through it with your basic attacks. So I'd say it's pretty accessible. You just gotta find your own way through it. And I'm really enjoying it. It's very bombastic, very satisfying. It gives me flashbacks to bloody Monkey Magic when I watched that in Australia, and Jesus, when I was like 10. But yeah, it's enjoyable. You can see certain things. It's not necessarily cultural, but recognize that this is not some, 20-year of Western gameplay design philosophy inside of a AAA studio. So yes, there's a lot of money and talent and work into this, but it's still their first big outing in this space. An example being, the environments, as beautiful as they are, there is a kind of almost static nature to them. Not necessarily, you got leaves blowing and flowing water and all that sort of stuff, but finding the boundaries, because there's no map or anything like that, it's not clearly delineated. And there's a lot of accidental telegraphs, things like fallen tree logs in just about any other game built in the West. You'd look at that and you'd recognize it as a way to walk up a wall or go into another area, that sort of thing. I'm not trying to necessarily bash on the game, but I'm pointing out that they are kind of free from these established principles, which opens up the box of why are they established, So yeah, okay, I've kind of clipped it up against soft walls and boundaries trying to explore, and come to realize there's not a lot of exploring in this. There's not a lot of side areas, but I don't care either. As someone who kind of hates side stuff and, just fluff and filler and crap trying to justify the price tag, there's enough there that if you stray off the path a little bit, maybe you'll pick up like a crafting material or whatever. But the game will sort of gently put you back on the path, and it's all fairly linear. Like, it opens up and there's a bit of paths and all that. And I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing. I actually quite like it's a bit more focused. I would say closer to, the obfuscated corridor-like nature of something like Halo. You don't really think about the fact that when you're going through a jungle level at the beginning of Halo 3 that you're going down a corridor, but you kind of are if you looked at the schematic. And this is sort of doing something the same there. And I like it. It feels like we've kind of lost the thread on that sort of thing. I will touch on the controversy real quickly. A lot of people are using this as their champion against woke, DEI, all that sort of stuff. There's a whole bunch of controversy. Look, I try and stay out a lot of that. I enjoy the idea of just being a gamer, playing games, and kind of being a chronicler. I am not an activist, but it is fascinating watching this stuff happen and see the tide turn, so to speak. This isn't the greatest game of all time, but it is interesting that it's released right in the middle of this kind of popularist reactionary zeitgeist. And it's cool to see firsthand this not just break steam records, but absolutely blow them out of the fucking water. Now, on the other side of that, you've got some legitimate bad actors that legitimately reviewed this poorly for its lack of diversity, and it just sort of makes me laugh at the state of Western politics and this centralism in their worldview of the center of all goodwill, morality, and all that is the West. And it's kind of cool to just see, China has entered the chat. And look, I would say obviously China's not woke or anything like that, but I don't think they exist inside of this paradigm, this weird modern Western political framing. So on the other hand of that, I wouldn't necessarily say China is based. It would be closer to explaining the color red to a blind person. Just to use a really quick analogy that's a bit ham-fisted, China's China. They don't have this DEI shit inside of their ideology. And so that's probably my one takeaway, and I don't want to rant too much, but I thought I'd throw it on the end, is that this is being championed as a sort of a political chess piece for many sides of the Western ideological battlefront. But I think all it is it's just China's big effort at giving AAA a go. It's polished, it's very obviously patriotically, passionately positioned. They've chosen a very core fable that underpins a lot of, their society and their storytelling. And at least that part for me is kind of inspiring to see that sort of straight-faced passion project about something important about your mythology of your people. That's cool, and it's nice to see, because while I don't fetishize other cultures, I do enjoy when they put it on the table and go, hey, this is my culture, this is important to us, let me share. Check it out in game form. Anyway, so it's been an absolute pleasure to check this out. Will I review it fully? Maybe. Just another quick addendum. I flip-flop on reviews and overviews. The truth is, you play a game for half an hour. Most of the time, you know whether it's good or not, and you can render a recommendation. And that's all I really care about. So I don't know, maybe we just stick with daily overviews. I don't really want to be that guy that just mainlines this game for 20 hours over the next bloody 2 days and burns myself out. I'll get around to clocking this, but I'm not in a screaming hurry to do it either. Anyway, this video's gone on a little bit longer, but I had a few things that I wanted to address beyond normal scope. Game is really cool, and I recommend it. Check it out, especially if you kind of want a bit of a breath of fresh air in that AAA high fidelity space. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.